very few things are irreversible. And so lawyers are very, very risk averse. And most of the time they're asking themselves, but if I quit or if I leave this firm, then what? Then what? Right? But try not to burn your bridges. Just make sure that if it doesn't work out, you can go back. So that gives you that security blanket. And once you have that, you feel that actually now you're free and you can move forward.
Hey everyone, it's Shulin, and before kicking off, I'd really appreciate it if you could show After the Bar some love by giving it a 5-star rating and hitting that follow button on Spotify. And if you're tuning in on YouTube, do subscribe to us and hit that thumbs up button. Welcome to After the Bar. So this season, we're talking about change. We're talking about navigating transitions, and you'll hear from our guests how they pivot towards new directions. And today, I'm really excited because I've invited someone who has pivoted her career not once, not twice, but many times. And you're going to hear from her some of her lessons learned, what you must consider before you pivot your career. And she's even going to give us a small masterclass on how to brand yourself on LinkedIn. Welcome, Lara! Thanks for coming. And anyway, to the listeners out there, Lara might be a familiar name because she also runs her own podcast.
I do indeed. Yes, the Legal Genie podcast. It's fun to be on the other side of the mic for a change.
Yes, in the hot seat for once.
The hot seat, I feel it burning already.
So Lara, tell us, because you said to me over lunch one day that some people call you the queen of pivots. Can you tell us more about the various pivots you've done?
Well, so considering I'm only 21, it's quite a surprise how many pivots I've made. But yes, like you, I started out as a lawyer, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, thinking it was the career for me. However, my fate had other ideas in mind, and I ended up leaving the law to go into Montessori teaching. So I've always wanted to be a mother and have a nice big family. And I thought that Montessori school and teaching is something that's very holistic. And I was very attracted to that method of education. So I did a part-time course to become an official trained Montessori teacher with a view to opening up my own day nursery. I could see the parents, the professional mothers and fathers struggling at the end of the day to reach the nursery to pick up their children. And I thought that if you could provide a fantastic daycare, which is much more of a home, and that you could even provide overnight care for those last minute deals, that might be a very worthwhile and actually very valuable offering. So that was my idea. I was going to go into operating these incredible nurseries. However, the government regulation and various other financial things stopped me from doing that. And I fell into a kitchen business with a former
That's another pivot.
colleague.
So from lawyer, pivoting to Montessori teacher, and then to
kitchen designer.
Wow.
So this Swedish friend of mine, so a lawyer together with me at DLA Piper, she had this gorgeous kitchen in her place. And I was moving as well. And I said, wow, your kitchen is amazing. Where did you get this? And she said, well, I got it from my hometown. So I ordered a kitchen like that in a flat on the King's Road in Chelsea. And then we moved house again to Wimbledon, and we put in another of those kitchens. And people kept coming and admiring our kitchens, saying how amazing they were. And so we said, you know what? Why don't we do this as a business as well?
Wow.
So we went to Sweden, we talked to the manufacturers. We also spoke to another manufacturer, a high-end one. So we had a high-end and we had a mid-range. And we started this business from a chalet in my garden.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So when you were in the furniture business, as well as being a Montessori school teacher, were you also being a lawyer at the same time? Were those your side hustles?
Yeah, that's quite a good question, because actually when I was doing the kitchen business, both of us were lawyers. So we did all our in-house legal ourselves. So
Wow.
all of the formation of the company, all of the contracts, anything legal, we did it. So yeah, I guess I did more than her, in-house legal counsel as well to
Oh,
some
wow.
degree.
So it's like a
Yeah.
side hustle whilst both of you were in private practice.
So I had left private practice to do the Montessori nursery school teaching first, and then had gone into that business. So she was still working 3 days a week as a lawyer.
Ah,
She was at Baker
I
and
see.
McKenzie, but
Mm.
I was already, doing my nursery teaching.
Yes.
So I had left already, but it was a very interesting business. Yes.
For sure. And today you are Lara Quie, the business development leader, as well as an executive coach, and you still run your own business.
Yes, that's right. So once my husband had been offered a new position in Hong Kong, we moved from London to Hong Kong for that. And that meant that I sold my half of the kitchen business. And I'll give it a plug. It's called Solar Kitchens, which is Sophia
nice.
and Lara Kitchens.
Oh, nice.
But after I sold my half of Solar Kitchens, we moved to Hong Kong. And there I had my third daughter. And I was thinking to myself, I'm enjoying myself as a lady of leisure. I'm doing a lot of tennis. I was playing tennis a lot and enjoying myself. But, really I should earn a bit of a wage here. I have got three daughters to raise, and also to set a good example, of a working mother. And so I actually fell into business development. My next door neighbor, a very nice Scottish lady, had a very good friend called Jane, and Jane was in business development. So Jane had told Fiona all about all of the work that she was doing. And so Fiona said, Lara, didn't you used to do something in legal? Why don't you become a business development person as well? Speak to Jane. So I spoke to Jane. Jane put me in touch with the recruiter that she knew. And that recruiter, Rachel Tarr, plug for Rachel, she put me in a contract. So I went just to try it out, 6 months at a really lovely firm, Winston and Strawn in Hong Kong. And I did it for 6 months, and actually from the rest is history, really.
Wow, amazing. So because you've pivoted quite a few times, does it actually get any easier each time you pivot? Because it sounds like you kind of this opportunity fell into your lap.
Yeah, I'd say that every time, a lot of it was sort of gut instinct and a very natural progression. Although, on paper, I think if you were to look at each of those, they sound rather random. However, each of them kind of makes sense in a lot of ways. So when it comes to the kitchen business, for example, I've always been very interested in interior design, interested in buildings and architecture, and I have a very good sort of spatial imagination. So if I walk into a room, I'll look at the walls and think, well, I wonder what would happen if I demolished that and, move the window over there. So that came quite easily to me. So I think it's because my mother has always told me that you can do anything that you set your mind to. So I've never felt limited. I've always felt that why not give it a go? I now have changed it from jack of all trades, master of none, to Jill of some trades, master of some.
I like that. That. So just hearing you say and talk us through all these pivoting, I'm sure there are listeners out there who are thinking, wow, Lara, you're so brave. I don't know if I can do that. And I think one of the things that crosses people's minds, certainly it crossed my mind when I left lawyering to become a recruiter, is the opportunity cost. So you were a very well-paid lawyer and you were educated in Oxford. So for you to then do something else, did you ever wonder at the back of your mind whether you should have gone back to law?
I think my situation was actually very unique. So when I was a trainee, I had met my husband, who was a fellow trainee, but just the year above me. And we had got together and got married. But at the moment that I decided to quit the law, he moved from So we were both at Denton's. He moved from Denton's to a US firm, Sidley Austin. And when he moved across, actually his salary doubled. So
wow.
we didn't miss out on my salary. So in theory, yes, obviously, if I had been earning well, then we'd have been very well off. But we were just very lucky that at that point in time, we just kind of got back to where we were. We didn't really need my salary. And that, I must say, was such a blessing. That did give me the freedom to consider an alternative career, because certainly being a nursery school teacher is really not very well paid.
Yes. And it also sounds like your husband is very supportive of all your various pivots.
Yes. I mean, he's my biggest fan, I must say, apart from my mother, who's also a very big fan. But my husband is incredibly open-minded when it comes to whatever I can do, because, oh my goodness, he's so, long-suffering husband, poor Jonathan. He is always part of all my wild ideas. And, 1 minute I'm like, hey, I think I should become a nursery school teacher. What do you think? Oh, yes, Lara, you can do it. I'm like, okay, why don't I open a kitchen company? Oh, okay, then yeah, go ahead. So, hey, anything that I want to do, he just goes, that's a good idea. He's never once said, are you sure?
Really?
Never,
Wow.
never.
That's incredible.
Yeah, actually.
How about your friends? Did any of your friends question your decision when you were pivoting?
I think the thing about my first pivot, which obviously was the most dramatic in terms of leaving the law, I did it so quickly that no one had time to kind of question it. It wasn't like I was hanging around saying, you know what, I'm thinking of leaving. What do you think? No, I didn't. I just did it. So then other people did say, oh, wow, you left? And all they could say was, that's so brave.
Yes,
right?
incredible.
Oh, that's so brave. You just think, what? Why is that brave?
Yeah.
No, it isn't.
It's almost
easy. It's much easier to leave than to stay, folks.
So it's like you had the opposite experience of me, because I took years to come to terms with the change.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting and refreshing to hear this experience. There must be, on some level, the willingness to embrace change and uncertainty.
Yes.
And in your case, maybe it was your upbringing, your mom, and clearly your husband, who's the biggest cheerleader, that also facilitated that. Because it might have been very different if, let's say, these people were unsupportive.
Oh, 100%. I think you have to have people around you that will accept change and that are comfortable with change. At the end of the day, once you have a family, whether it is your parents or a partner, you can't be selfish. You can't just do rash things without considering them. So yes, of course, I did consult all of them before making this decision. However, I totally agree that, it's about upbringing. I was someone that was brought up in a very go with the flow kind of lifestyle. It was always like, life is what you make it, do something different, make sure that you live your best life. So I think because I had, thought law was going to be one thing, and when I found out it wasn't, I was quite disappointed. I know you were quite disappointed as well to discover it really wasn't what we all thought it was going to be.
So what did you think law was going to be?
So I think I kind of fell into it when I was very, very young. So my mother was an investment banker and she worked with lawyers all the time, and Linklaters in particular. So, I was led to believe that law was all about the big, shiny buildings and, huge transactions and lots of money and people looking glamorous on TV. But the reality for me, because I did European competition law, which was mostly mergers and also cartel defense, the reality for me was very, very long hours, not being able to get my sleep, lots of stress, deadline, no social life, no time for my friends. Yes, lots of money, but no time to spend it, and the thought for me of having a family was impossible. And so I was disappointed because I thought, look, when I was at school, they told me, Lara, if you study hard, you'll do well and you can do what you want. The world's your oyster. So, of course, I went to Oxford. I went to the best law school. I went to a great firm to do my training. Everything was the best. But when you get to the top and you go, well, is this it? like, this is it, me actually slaving away till 3 a.m. every day. I didn't think that that was what I was working for. So I was quite happy that I'd ticked that off, that I'd done it. But it was like, right, I've been here, done that. And actually, it's not for me. I'm just going to move on.
Amazing. And it's great that you had that clarity and the gumption to make that decision. Looking back, is there anything you might have done differently?
Yes, I think that if I had had support, if I'd had mentors who I'd really thought could have guided me, I think, like you, I do tend to think, oh, what if I'd actually thought more widely about the profession? Perhaps I could have gone to a smaller firm. Maybe actually I could have moved into employment law or something a little bit more gentle that didn't have those kind of crazy deadlines. I think maybe I might have found a niche and been happy in a smaller firm, actually. But when you're led to believe that big is beautiful, that is the only way forward to be a success, you have to be in these huge, big law firms. And you have to be killing it in corporate, it's difficult to walk away from that. But I would say that with the support of, say, an executive coach or a really good person from HR, or even maybe a therapist, I might have calmed down a bit, and it might not have been so kind of all or nothing as it was.
Yeah. And you know what, Lara? I believe everything happens for a reason. And the reason why you went through that journey is so that you can be who you are today. And today you are an executive coach, you're a business development leader, you can guide partners and, lawyers and all kinds of professionals, right, to deal with career change. Can you tell us how you help to unpack maybe someone's purpose? I'm not asking for free coaching here, but I'm just curious, because now that it's almost like all those things, lessons, and I wouldn't call them setbacks or failures, but more like learning points, they've set you up now to have the career you have today.
Yes, I feel that I'm, very much an advocate for people listening to their intuition. And when they're stuck and when they know that something's not right, to help them to get clarity on that. So when it comes to coaching, it is about listening and asking the right questions. So when someone says, oh, I'm not sure how to move forward here, I'm thinking about being at this crossroads. Should I stay here and become a partner, or should I move in-house, or should I leave law altogether? And I tell you what, but that 9 out of 10 times is what people want to know when they're a senior associate. So one of the questions to ask is, okay, when you look around at the partners that you work with and at other firms, etc., do you see yourself doing what they do? Do you like what's involved with being a partner? And do you like the work? And I think those are the 3 questions that people need to ask themselves. And so one of the most important things is the work. Do you like sitting at a desk, writing these kind of things, or do you like being an advocate? All of the things involved in law. Do you love just sitting there and doing that for hours? And many people do. And if you do, that's great. That means you want to be a lawyer. It's just a question of finding another place for you. So maybe you're just not fitting where you are, right? So maybe you need a different team. Maybe you need a different firm. Maybe you do need to go in-house, because ultimately the law is good for you. So that's fine. But if someone doesn't like the work, okay, so if you don't like the work, but do you like the legal environment? Do you want to be a partner still? Maybe could you actually focus on the business development side? Because there are many partners who actually excel in management and being, good at bringing in the work, and they don't do much of the legal anymore. So if you can excel at that and become a rainmaker in that way, there is still a path for you within law.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Yeah. So I think, asking yourself that. But then if you don't like either of those, then you have to think, okay, well, what might you like? Do you want to go down a completely different path, become a ballerina or something, something crazy.
Yes.
But, I think as a coach, I help to unpack maybe what did they aspire to be when they were a child, who in their circle seems to be really happy in a role. What things do they like to do in their spare time? What music do they like to listen to? What inspires them? So you generally try to hone in on what are the things that they enjoy and what might be a good opportunity for them.
Yeah. I like what you said about what actually inspired them when they were a child, because very often we forget what we set out to do. Because when we were a kid, there were no inhibitions, no limiting beliefs. And we believed we could be whatever we wanted. I mean, my son wants to be a fireman. And the other one wants to be, I think, a football star. Now table tennis. I can't keep track. But it's really nice that you can do that. And not just for lawyers, right? This is applicable, career advice applicable to all sorts of professions.
Yeah, 100%.
What do you think is the most important thing to unlearn? Because we learn so many things as adults. When you're trying to figure out what's the next step in your career, what's one thing that someone needs to unlearn?
I think it's the concept that you can't go back. So very few things are irreversible. And so lawyers are very, very risk averse. And most of the time they're asking themselves, but if I quit or if I leave this firm, then what, right? But try not to burn your bridges. Just make sure that if it doesn't work out, you can go back. So that gives you that security blanket. And once you have that, you feel that actually now you're free and you can move forward. And very few people need to go back, but it is the thing that holds them back in the first place. So let's say you're thinking of going in-house. You're a senior associate and then you've seen some friends in-house and they seem to be having a great time. So you go, okay, I'm going to try in-house. Let's see what that's like. But it may be that involves some different characteristics that you may not actually have, and you may feel better in private practice. So what's the problem? You just say, wow, I wanted to experience in-house. I've learned how to be commercial and sit on that side of the desk. I'm now bringing that back to private practice and I'm going to capitalize on that. And this is such a great thing. So you just reframe it. And it's not a failure for you to go back. It's a question of finding what's right for you. And you tried it, you experimented. If it didn't work out, no problem. Just go back. But if it does work out, then well, hey, there you've got this great new career as a GC.
That's the thing. Everyone's worried that they will fail. But what if it works out? Right?
What if?
Yes, what if?
Yeah, and it usually does, right? 9 times out of 10, it really will, because you've got clarity and you know that this is an itch you need to scratch. And so people, right. If you're sitting there and you're not scratching, you're feeling itchy, but you're not scratching it. That's no good.
Okay, that's quite a description.
Yeah.
But yes, you're absolutely right. Because when I left law, I actually gave myself 1 year. I was thinking, if this doesn't work out, I can go back, whether it's to that law firm or another law firm. And so important what you said about not burning bridges, because a lot of people, they overthink it. They don't realize, even if I decide to do something else, it's not the end. It will never be the end. You can always go back. Whether it's maybe say I'm an accountant in a big 4 firm and I go in-house, which is maybe to a bank, doesn't mean I can't go back to the firm.
Just maintain those relationships. Just think really big picture, really long term. What do you want your life to look like? All of these people, you will see them again. That's one of the things I've definitely learned in my life, is that you see people and then you think, oh, I bet I'll never see them again. No, you're going to see them again. Especially people that are difficult, you're bound to see them again. So you need to behave yourself and be nice to everyone.
Yeah. So were there times where you wish you could have handled yourself differently, looking back? Because now you've been working for 20 over years. And you obviously have, learned from certain things, and certain things have gone your way, certain things have not. I'm just wondering how our listeners can learn from some of your experience.
I suppose I would say that it's important to try and get yourself into a neutral position. So I would say that, my career decision was possibly a little rash. It was based on overworking. It was based on, being in a kind of a zombie state, not having enough rest and sleep and good nutrition. And so I was not in a good place. I really, really wasn't. And that meant that I think, I didn't have the clarity to consider other options. But I do think that those days were different. We're very lucky these days to have exposure to so much more people talking on podcasts like these, YouTube, etc. People really know of all the options. But in those days, this is a long time ago in the early 2000s, that no one spoke about that sort of thing. So, I don't regret my decision. It's been the best thing ever. I've really enjoyed all the different roles that I've played over the years. But I do think that I have been very lucky in that I am someone who, I have been blessed with the fact that actually most things that I turn my hand to, I can do pretty well. And so that is lucky because it's, a lot of things that I'd say that I think, oh, well, I'll just do that, like, oh, I'll just start a podcast by myself. Oh, I'll just do this. A lot of people tell me, oh, you do that by yourself. I don't know how to do it. And I don't know, I just learn how to do it and I just do it. It's not a big deal for me. But I think if you're somebody who is perhaps too perfectionist or is always afraid to give something a try, then you will find it difficult. However, if you throw yourself in and say, I'm not afraid of failure, I'm just going to give it a go. I've got my own low standards. And so long as I keep to my own low standards, I'm fine.
Yes. I love that because I'm similar in that I like to do things first and figure it out later. But the vast majority of people, especially lawyers, they want to figure everything out before they even press that publish button on LinkedIn, right? Even posting on LinkedIn is terrifying for them. So to people like that, my advice actually is usually to say that, look, what's the worst? You can delete the post. You can change jobs again. There is always something you can U-turn. It's not the end. But what do you say to someone who's listening to this and they still feel stuck? They think, good for you, Shulin, good for you, Lara. You make it look so easy to pivot. But I feel stuck and I'm petrified. What would you say to someone like that?
I'd say, get a coach.
Exactly. Call Lara.
No, you don't need to get a coach, but, talk through with your family and friends. Mm-hmm. Think about what else could be there for you. Why would you like to move? What are the actual issues there? Sometimes it might just be that you don't like your commute and actually you'd prefer to work from home. Well, then maybe you just find a job that satisfies that. A lot of the times people overcomplicate what it is they think and they make it into a huge mountain. Ultimately, most of these things are actually quite simple once you have clarity. So keep asking yourself the questions and maybe try it out on a friend. Try out the questions on them and then get them to ask those questions to you, or even stand in front of a mirror and ask yourself. But, I think it's once you speak things out, that is when you get clarity. That's why it's hard to do it in your head, and things that go round and round in your mind are not very useful. But speaking it out to somebody else, or even your pet, actually talking to your pet if you have a cat or a dog, telling them about what you're struggling with and what you're thinking. Well, I might do this. What if I did that? What would that look like? What is it that I'm worried about? Just ask yourself lots of questions. I think you will actually find that you'll get more clarity.
Yes, that's such excellent advice because actually a lot of the answers are within us. We just need someone or some way to help unpack that.
Yeah, it's definitely that. And I think it's that sounding board, but, someone to listen and, but you yourself listening to your own voice say things. So you have to speak it. There's no point, or actually you could journal it as well. I think that, lots of people find journaling quite powerful. So maybe you want to write down your thoughts in a journal or just write yourself a letter or just brainstorm ideas.
Yes.
So if you were to say, okay, what would be the wildest things I could do? Zookeeper, professional diver, whatever, right?
Yes.
So put down those things. Let's go back to the childhood that we talked about. When you were a child, did you really aspire? If you wanted to be a footballer, let's say, what could you do? Maybe you could do sports law, right?
Yes.
And you could get involved in some area that actually links to some passion or some interest that you had.
Yes.
So seek out those things that genuinely interest you and work out a way to just kind of tie it all in with your life.
Yes. So Lara, I'm going to ask you this question, which one of my coaches asked me. And I had to spend some time thinking. Let's see whether you can answer this question. If money is not a concern and failure is not an option, what would you do?
Well, actually, I've had so many harebrained ideas. It's unbelievable. But actually, I was very, very keen on having an orphanage. I'm very passionate about making sure that people grow up feeling like that they have a great opportunity. I find it very distressing when I see orphans and children with no parents. So yeah, if I had all the money in the world, I would start a huge foundation focused on children.
Wow, I can really feel that. Because it goes back to when you were a Montessori teacher, you really have a heart for children.
Yeah, I think I always have. I mean, I was teaching a friend of mine from the age of 6. So he was actually dyslexic. I mean, we obviously didn't know that in those days, but I was trying to teach him to read. And so I've always wanted to be a teacher. I've always been really interested in young children, in learning, in development. And the fact that, your childhood has a huge impact on the rest of your life and the way that you think.
It really does. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. We'll continue this conversation after this short break. Please don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a thumbs up on YouTube. It will help us make a much bigger impact. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. On the topic of teaching, you are, in a way, a teacher to a lot of people in the Singapore legal community when it comes to personal branding, when it comes to LinkedIn. So now I'm going to segue into this area. So how did you get started on LinkedIn? Can you share a little bit more about your journey?
I think I started like most people on LinkedIn, where you know, it's a repository for your CV and you put it on there and then forget about it. But then I started to realize that it was beginning to change, and I started to go on it. And especially with the advent of the smartphone, where, you know, when apps came into our life, I think that made a big difference. The app meant that you could check it out when you were waiting around in the line for the doctor, or in a taxi or something, but it really evolved. I mean, I very, very much noticed that it was a method for staying in contact with people, staying connected. And I've always been someone who likes to stay connected with everyone I've ever met in my entire life. And so I was, you know, busy connecting with people. Also, because I started doing my coaching, I recognized that I had to build a personal brand, because no one's going to know that I do coaching. How can I get my name out there that I do this? And then I also discovered posting. So I thought to myself, well, I can greatly improve my writing if I post. And then I began analyzing. As a lawyer, I'm like, oh, what's that person doing? Hey, I noticed that they space their post out like this. Oh, look at that person. They're using a lot of emojis. That makes it more interesting. Oh, look at that person. They've got some incredible hook first line that makes me press see more. You know, I started to notice all these things and take note. I took a very academic, lawyerly approach to my whole LinkedIn experience, began making notes, observing all the movers and shakers, following all of them. And I began to work out what the algorithm does. And I began to, you know, really research what all of this is about, and listen to podcasts all about LinkedIn, listen to, you know, people talking about how they were leveraging their personal brand, etc. So I think that, you know, I discovered that this really works. And then I began to get my own traction, and I was very deliberate in making sure that I post nearly every day. I try to make it as engaging as possible. I always end each post with a question. I'm always asking for engagement. but you have to make sure that you're interacting with others as well.
Yes.
It's not just about you and your post and what you've got to say. You have to be generous to others. So if someone's written a fantastic post and they've asked a question, or they've made you think about something, then you should comment on their post as well and say, this is, you've said this really well. This is such an interesting thing. I'd never thought of it like that.
Yes.
Or that's a great video you've posted. I've never seen something like that before, or whatever. But support others and they will support you.
Yes, the law of reciprocity.
Yes.
And I can see that, like, you are generous in providing comments. It comes back to you. And I must acknowledge you for being very authentic, because you are the same person I see online.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I mean, it's a bit of a pet peeve when the person I see online couldn't be more different from the person in real life. So I want to ask you, when it comes to posting, and you mentioned the algorithm, is there a magic in posting at 8 a.m., 9 a.m. or lunchtime? Now that you post every day?
Well, so very interestingly, I decided to put this to the test, and I did a poll last week, and I've literally just screenshot the answers. So I asked people, when do you first look at LinkedIn? And I did notice a lot of people didn't realize that I said first, because they say, oh, I'm on it all day. But I said first. When do you first look at LinkedIn? Because they need to be on it when I'm posting, right? So it had said something like, I think 45% had said they go on it 6 to 8 a.m. And then there were another 35% that said they go on it 9 till 10 a.m. And then there were others who were on later. And so generally 8 or 9 a.m. is the sweet spot. Obviously, it's all about time zones as well, though. So if you've got a good following here in Singapore in this time zone, and you post, say, at just before 9 a.m., you've got a high chance that your friends will be online and they'll see it and they'll be able to post. But it's very important that you get things going early, because basically you've got, I call it the golden hour, but that very first hour after your post is when you want to have as much engagement as possible. Because what happens is the algorithm basically throws it out to say 5 to 10% of your own network. And it says, hey, Shulin's just posted this. What do you think, guys? Let's say everyone goes, wow, great post, like, comment. Then the algorithm goes, whoa, this is worth showing to other people. We will push it out further. And it eventually kind of snowballs, right? But the comments are what makes it go, viral, as it were. Likes are not enough. Also, I would say that a sort of thumbs up like is worth less than if you put insightful or you choose one of the others.
Really?
I would
had
say
no idea.
It's a slight, because it shows more thought. It shows that you are engaging and thinking. It's very easy to go like, right? That's lazy. But if you actually make a comment, or if you reshare it, or if you then comment and then you DM someone directly, the algorithm is very, very clever. It can absorb any information that you give to it. So the more interaction it sees between you and it notices, it will know who to show it to. So that's really important. You have to engage. You can't just, as they say, post and forget. You can't. You have to be in the right place. So you'll see that quite often I don't actually post at 9 a.m. and that can be because I'm too busy. So if I know that I'm going to be busy for that hour, I'll do it later when I can actually engage.
Yes. I mean, personally, I've given up trying to post in the morning, because that's the busiest period. I'm trying to maybe get my kids out to school. I'm trying to rush to work. I don't have time to engage. And I like to now post at night. So like 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. And I've decided to care a little bit less about engagement, but I can do that because I built a certain following. But back then I used to be 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. I was trying to experiment. I want to know how do you create your posts on LinkedIn? Do you have a schedule where you create your posts, over 30 minutes, 1 hour, or do you post on the fly?
I'm actually a totally spontaneous poster. So I do it on the MRT in the morning on the underground. That's part of my routine. So I get on the train, standing there, very rarely get a seat, and I literally post on my phone so I can see what it looks like. And that's why there's lots of typos. I think the typos are good because it shows that I'm not AI.
Yes.
Yeah, I really try to just think of, what's interested me in the moment. What am I thinking of right now? And I think that's what attracts people to my posts and why you say, oh, it's so authentic. It is because it is. It's me on the train thinking, what about this? I'm thinking this today. And I also have got into a much more conversational tone. I deliberately will type it like I'm saying it. And again, people have always fed back that they like that style as well. It's more informal, it's more engaging because this is social media, right? So it's not supposed to be an essay. It's not supposed to be super crafted. There are a lot of people who've got some beautifully written posts. So Manaz Malik, I'll call out my very learned and very nice friend at 20 Essex. She writes really beautiful posts, but they do take her some time. She does sit down and, craft them deliberately. And that works very well. She's got, great following. However, my style's definitely not like that. I'm not interested in doing that. I'm just there to help people think differently.
Yes. Oh, I'm the same. I'm a spontaneous poster. So people like to tell me, no, Shulin, you need to batch create, you need to schedule it.
Yeah.
I can't.
No.
It takes the fun out of it.
Mhm.
So I like to, sometimes I get inspiration at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
So I type it all out and then next morning I post. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all there is to it. And there's so much more joy when you post actually what you're thinking. And don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Because if the post doesn't get too much engagement, it doesn't get too much engagement. And if the post resonates with some people, it resonates with some people.
And, that is the spirit of LinkedIn, and those people who enjoy it.
Yes.
And do it for themselves actually are the ones who will get more traction and success. Because if you're constantly trying to just be, clickbait or you're not inauthentic, as you say, people can see through that. And also, what's the point? Why are you doing it? I mean, for me, I'm doing it to make new friends, make new contacts, get connections, learn new things, teach myself to be a better writer, experiment with social media, understand how the algorithm works, understand what personal branding is. Can you build one? Yes, you can. Can you learn how to do LinkedIn? Yes, you can. Can you train LinkedIn? Yes, you can. All of this is possible, but you just have to decide what you want to do with it. The first question I ask people is, why are you on LinkedIn? What do you want it to do for you?
Absolutely. Because if you don't have clarity on the why, you will very quickly burn out.
Yeah.
You might post fervently, feverishly for a few weeks and then stop posting.
Yeah. So you have to enjoy it. I mean, I genuinely can't wait to click on my LinkedIn and have a look. If I'm in a taxi, I find myself thinking, oh, just go and comment on someone's post. Let's see, what they're up to, and search for those people to support them and see, they're putting valuable content out there, and so many ideas, creativity and originality, and we have to support human original ideas.
Absolutely.
And so I can already see, I noticed comments that are written by AI. You can already see it. And that's quite sad. I mean, I several paragraphs of an answer, and there's just certain little signature things in there that I think we're all learning are just not the way humans write.
Oh, absolutely. I can immediately spot a comment or a post written by AI. I'm actually quite curious if there's someone listening to this right now and they are thinking of starting to post on LinkedIn, but they're very intimidated and they have no idea how to start. What advice would you give that person?
So I think asking yourself, why am I on LinkedIn in the first place? And, what interests you and what do you want to share? Is it because, I mean, let's say you're a partner in a law firm and actually you want to build a personal brand because you want to become a thought leader and be seen as someone with expertise in a certain area in order to attract more work and, get more instructions in from clients. That's totally valid and a very good thing to do. So how would you go about it? Well, thinking about different ways to present what you do. So you could have light-hearted ways, such as, this is me at a conference. I don't regard that as bragging. I just regard that as sharing your experience, and that's fine. And then you might want to link to an article. So you've written a longer article and you might put a short synopsis about, these are the salient points that I'm going to point out. But if you're really interested in the longer form, here's a link to my article. You might want to have some really great little tips and tricks on certain things in your area of law where you want to explain that. You might want to show industry expertise that clients will identify with. So if you are trying to attract work, I would really write with your ideal client in mind. So let's say they are the head of shipping, and they want to know about your expertise. So what would you want them to know so that they would know that you're the person to go to for this? Have you got commercial insights that are going to help them? Can you see the things that are coming up on the horizons that you can talk about? You don't need to go in depth and give away your secret sauce. I mean, I know that most lawyers are like, I don't want to give free advice. It isn't about free advice. However, you do actually have to put yourself out there and give free advice. You do. But are they going to rely on your free advice and say, well, I heard it on a podcast, therefore I'm doing this? No, they are actually going to come to you and say, you said this, therefore you know about that. Can you, can I instruct you to help me with this?
Yes.
Because no matter how much we spoon feed people, actually they still want to come and get your advice. It's amazing. So yeah.
Yes. Can you name a few lawyers you think have gotten personal branding done right?
There are, within the Singapore legal industry, obviously, the late great Adrian Tan
of course, without a doubt.
Absolutely my hero. A very gifted writer, absolutely humble and fantastic, very nice man.
Yes.
I really genuinely cried on the day I found out that he'd passed away. And I did have one episode of my podcast with him, and we were supposed to have a second episode, but we never got round to it.
Same for us, for After the Bar.
That was so sad. I've already mentioned Manaz Malik from 20 Essex, who again is a really outstanding writer. Rob Hanna from the UK, he's a recruiter as well, but he's got the Legally Speaking podcast and his social media is unbelievable. You yourself, Shulin, I should mention you. Who else is there? Gosh, I like
Alex in the US.
Alex Su.
Yes.
He's crazy.
He is hilarious.
He is really good.
Yeah.
So I think what I like about him is that he doesn't take himself very seriously, and he always used to do those fantastic videos.
TikToks. Yes.
He is great. I would say I follow...
I like Sahar in the UK. He is hilarious
Sahar
too.
Faruqi,
yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
He is brilliant.
I want to meet him in real life. And you can too.
Yes.
So to the listeners out there who are listening to this, we are wrapping up the podcast. The reason why I was in such a huge rush to get Lara Quie on the podcast is because she's going to relocate back to the UK after 13 years in Singapore. Plot twist. But yes, we will miss you, Lara.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been really heartened to see so many messages from, my Singaporean friends saying that they will miss me. I will miss everyone here as well. Singapore has really been a great home to me, I think, because especially being a Eurasian, I'm half Japanese, half British. And when I'm in the UK, everyone thinks I'm foreign and Asian. And when I'm in Asia, everyone thinks I'm foreign and Western. So Singapore's been the only place that actually has a recognized race called Eurasian where I feel at home, and where until I open my mouth, obviously with my English accent, people don't judge me and they think I'm Singaporean. So I like that.
Oh, lovely. And you know what, Lara, you've been a great teacher to the community, as I mentioned. You've contributed so much. And yeah, I know many of us are going to miss you. When I said to a senior counsel that I was inviting you on the podcast, his first reaction was, Shulin, why are you inviting a competitor? So I said, huh? I don't view it as competition. I view it as collaboration. You know, I think that's the spirit that you have that, you know, allows and draws people in. And yeah, you are going to be missed, but I'm sure you'll come back.
I will. I hope to come back on a regular basis, definitely to see all my friends here. I've had such a great time. And yeah, of course, the food. I will miss the food and the weather.
The food. So before we wrap up, let's get to the rapid fire round of questions. Okay, so what do you enjoy doing most during the weekend?
So I'm really quite an addicted sewer. I'm or a sewist, as in artist. So I love sewing. I make quilts and I love different fabrics. So I find it very satisfying to create things with my hands so that I've got a product to show.
Oh, nice. And what's your biggest pet peeve?
Biggest pet peeve? Oh, I suppose, people being rude. You know, there's no need for people to be rude. Let's all remember our manners that our parents taught us when we were little. So yeah, rudeness.
Yes. If there's anywhere in the world you would go, where would it be?
I have missed going to Japan. So my mother's from Kyushu. I would love to go back to Japan. Yeah.
Oh, nice. And what's your go-to breakfast?
Any food. I'm a fan of all food, but I'd say, you know, I have lots of fruit in the morning. I like to have English breakfast tea with plenty of sugar.
Nice. And what's something you're grateful for this week?
This week, I'm grateful for you for being on this podcast. I'm grateful for, as I said, being in Singapore, having had the opportunity to be an expat in Hong Kong and then in Singapore, to really have been embraced by the people here. I mean, it has been a fantastic time to be in Singapore. You know, I've really been a fan of this country. I do think that people need to experience life abroad a little bit to come back and appreciate how good it is here, because many people complain, and I do think they haven't seen the real world. So I would say, folks, go and spend at least a month living somewhere else in the real world, and then come back to the paradise that is Singapore.
Nice. And what's the first word that comes to your mind when I say the word bar?
Mars bar.
Nice. Okay. Thank you so much, Lara, for being on the podcast. I really appreciate you coming.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Shilin. I've had a great time.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And you know what? If you've enjoyed this podcast, then be generous and share it with all your friends, family, colleagues. Follow me on LinkedIn. Follow Lara on LinkedIn. And we will catch you next episode. See you. Bye. Thank you, Lara, for sharing your experience with us today. To all our listeners, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Do drop your comments below if you're listening to this on YouTube, and hit that subscribe and thumbs up button. If you're on Spotify, hit that follow button and give us a 5-star rating. Don't hesitate to share this episode with all of your friends so they can join us as well. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next episode of After the Bar. See you!